wears his Sunday best. Mother's tired, she needs a rest. The kids are playing up downstairs. Sister's sighing in her sleep. Brother's got a date to keep, he can't hang around. Our house in the middle of our street. Our house in the middle of our house, it has a crowd. There's always something happening and it's usually quite loud. Our mum, she's so house proud. Nothing ever slows her down and a mess is not allowed. Our house in the middle of our street. Our house in the middle of our house in the middle of our street. Something tells you that you've got to move in the middle of our. Father gets up late for work. Mother has to iron his shirt. Then she sends the kids to school, sees them off with a small kiss. She's the one they're going to miss in lots of ways. And everything was room when we would have such a very good time, such a fine time, such a happy time. And I remember how we'd play, simply waste the day away. Then we'd say nothing would come between us, two dreamers. Father wears his Sunday best. Mother's tired, she needs a rest. The kids are playing up downstairs. Sister's sighing in her sleep. Brother's got a date to keep, he can't hang around. Our house in the middle of our street. Our house in the middle of our street. Our house in the middle of our street. Our house in the middle of our house was our castle and our keep. Our house in the middle of our street. Our house, that was where we used to sleep. Our house in the middle of our street. Our house in the middle of our street. Father wears his Sunday best. Mother's tired, she needs a rest. The kids are playing up downstairs. Sister's sighing in her sleep. Brother's got a date to keep, he can't hang around. Our house in the middle of our street. Our house in the middle of our house, it has a crowd. There's always something happening and it's usually quite loud. Our mum, she's so house proud. Nothing ever slows her down and a mess is not allowed. Our house in the middle of our street. Our house in the middle of our house in the middle of our street. Something tells you that you've got to move in the middle of our. Father gets up late for work. Mother has to iron his shirt. Then she sends the kids to school, sees them off with a small kiss. She's the one they're going to miss in lots of ways. In the middle of our street. wears his Sunday best. Mother's tired, she needs a rest. The kids are playing up downstairs. Sister's sighing in her sleep. Brother's got a date to keep, he can't hang around. Our house in the middle of our street. Our house in the middle of our street. Our house in the middle of our street. Our house in the middle of our house was our castle and our keep. Our house in the middle of our street. Our house, that was where we used to sleep. Our house in the middle of our street. Our house in the middle of our street.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the house that Dennis built. Who knew he had so many faces? Particularly love the one over there on the left, which says, "You put what on my track?" We are here, and we are there, and seemingly everywhere, thanks to this pandemic, to remember and celebrate the life of Dennis Fairall. And it's more than appropriate that we do it here, in a place where Dennis changed so many lives for the better. And not just the lives of his athletes, but the lives of everybody that he touched. Athletes, coaches, officials, administrators. And that's going to be clearly underlined here today, that Dennis had a positive impact on the lives of people he never met, of people who never met him. He's left an incredible legacy, and we'll get to that in the next little while. Before I begin, I certainly want to offer my personal condolences to Jan and to Dennis's family. They're here today, of course. And to his extended family, Lancer track and field and cross-country athletes and coaches, and to those athletes and coaches who never wore the Windsor blue and gold, but had the great pleasure of knowing Dennis. Were it not for this virus, I think we would have turned people away here at the Fieldhouse today. It's not nearly large enough to hold the number of people who would be here today under normal circumstances. So a particular welcome to those who have joined us this afternoon virtually from all across the country. We'll be hearing from several of them this afternoon. But first, I'd like you to please welcome the President and Vice Chancellor of the University of Windsor, Dr. Robert Gordon.
Thank you so much, Tony. Good afternoon, everyone. We are meeting today right here in the Dennis Fairall Fieldhouse to celebrate the life of a remarkable and beloved member of our University of Windsor community, Dennis Fairall, and to remember the many ways he has touched the lives of all of us here in attendance and so many of you watching remotely as well. Firstly, to Dennis's wife, Janet, and family, please accept my deepest condolences on behalf of my own family and the entire University of Windsor community. Please know that we mourn with you today and are incredibly grateful for everything Dennis brought to the university and all of the people that he impacted during his long and storied career. My admiration of Dennis, both as a coach and as an individual, goes back before my time here at the University of Windsor. My daughter Emily and her partner Kyle were both middle distance runners at the University of Guelph during the huge Guelph-Windsor rivalry days in track and field. At all of the meets that I went to over the years, I could always tell that each and every Lancer athlete were first and foremost teammates. I vividly remember thinking that Dennis must have been the catalyst for that attitude. I more recently had the privilege of meeting Dennis in person shortly after I started at the University of Windsor at the Sports Hall of Fame event last year. I told him what a personal inspiration he was to me. Of course, we all know about Dennis's many accomplishments on the track, as well as one of the most decorated coaches in Canadian university history. Though what I have been hearing even more about this past week is the lifelong impact Dennis has had on the students he coached and the many, many long-lasting friendships that developed out of the few short years Dennis spent coaching each of his athletes. Last week, I read a story in the media that talked about Dennis receiving dozens of wedding invitations over the years. Each bride or groom hopeful that a person who held such a prominent place in their lives as athletes would be there to watch them take another monumental step in their life journey. In reading that, I was struck by the fact that long after most of these students had moved past university athletics, as they grew their lives, started careers, formed life partnerships, and brought children into the world, what meant the most to them was how Dennis made them feel. They felt valued. They felt accomplished. They felt invincible. They felt love. As a university community, we take great pride in all that Dennis accomplished, including such accolades as recognition by the CIS and OUA for track and field and cross-country Coach of the Year, a remarkable 65 times. 25 Canadian University cross-country and track and field championships. 46 incredible Ontario championships, and so many other track and field accomplishments, too many to note here today. But today we are also privileged to have the opportunity to celebrate what Dennis brought to us as a mentor, educator, and genuine leader. As you all know, this special space we're sitting in today was renamed the Dennis Fairall Fieldhouse in Dennis's honor in 2016. Not only because we celebrate extraordinary athletic achievement, but because we celebrate character and kindness and determination. We celebrate the value in encouraging others to do great things in all areas of their lives and offering our support when it matters. Today, we celebrate a remarkable individual who found his greatest successes in proudly helping others achieve theirs. Dennis Fairall's impact will be indefinitely embedded in the blue and gold Lancer spirit. And though we will miss him, we will continue to honor his legacy of good sportsmanship, team spirit, hard work, and friendship right here in the Dennis Fairall Fieldhouse. Thank you. Dennis Fairall will forever be a Windsor Lancer and a part of the University of Windsor.
Thank you, Dr. Gordon. Now I would like to invite Dennis's brother-in-law, Kelly Severe, to share some thoughts with us. Kelly?
Thank you, Tony. On behalf of Janet, her family, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the University of Windsor for this very fitting tribute to Dennis and for hosting it in the house that Dennis built. I remember my only lap of the track of the Dennis Fairall Fieldhouse was a few years ago when Dennis was still mobile using his walker. Dennis was coaching Melissa Bishop and Corey Belmore that day, and when he finished with their practice, Dennis and I did a lap together. Being the true competitor he was, when we approached the finish line, Dennis leaned forward and edged me out. But I tried to tell him that my arm crossed the finish line first. This is where he showed his technical side and said it had to be my torso. I knew this, but I also knew that I wasn't defeating Dennis on his own track. I also thought Dennis was always getting in trouble with Janet, as she would often tell me that he was in the doghouse again. We all know what that really meant. Dr. Dennis "Dawg" Fairall was busy building his dynasty here, and his legacy will live on in the Dennis Fairall Fieldhouse. Hello, everyone. My name is Kelly Sivier, brother-in-law and former athlete to Dennis. I'm honored to have an opportunity to share in this celebration of an amazing life that was ended way too early. Before I begin, my wife Linda, our children, and the entire Sivier family extend our love and support to Janet, Jeremy, Michael, Aaron, Chad, Sophie, and Evie during this most difficult of times. My involvement with Dennis had a track and field and cross-country side, as well as a family connection. I remember being recruited by Dennis in the early years of the Tillsonburg Legion Track and Field Club, and I was one of the original 7 members. And I also brought my original sweatsuit, and it kind of still fits me. Dennis took me to meet Glendale High School track and cross-country coach Bud Worth and have a trial run to see if I could join the Glendale cross-country team. I wasn't sure what Dennis was getting me into, as Bud joined me in the run, wearing his rubber boots from doing the chores in his cattle barn. We completed the run with Bud, boots and all. I made the team, and the rest is history. Like many of you that have been influenced by Dennis, I trusted his judgment and enjoyed a lengthy running career after that. On the family side, the Sivier family welcomed Dennis in our unique way while he dated and then eventually married Janet on October 18th, 1974. 46 years later, Dennis still had our stamp of approval, and when Jeremy and Aaron arrived on the scene, they too learned what it meant to be part of the Siviers. Our greeting usually included a friendly slug on the shoulder. They even created an emoji for it on your cell phone. On the occasion of Aaron and Chad's wedding, a number of Dennis's friends and athletes witnessed our unusual greeting. I greeted Dennis that night with the good old Sivier slug, but unfortunately I caught Dennis off balance and he ended up on the floor. Everyone around Dennis had a look of shock on their faces, and I thought they were going to come to Dennis's rescue and take me down. I immediately grabbed Dennis and helped him back up and assured him that he was okay, and the wedding celebration continued. Another fun story about Dennis in the early years involved my brother George. Dennis had come over to our place for a visit. We know that he was just hitting on Janet, but we decided to go outside to play a little game of football. Knowing Dennis, though, he probably wanted to organize a track meet for us instead. After playing for a while, Dennis was going for a pass and ended up falling on top of George. George began crying, and Dennis became quite concerned and carried him back to the house, screaming. Dennis thought George had broken his legs as his feet were in a very awkward position. Dennis thought George should go to the hospital, but it was determined that he did not need to go after all. In his hurry to go outside to play, George had put his boots on the wrong feet. That sums up how caring Dennis was, and we would often laugh when we reminisced about that incident. My final story about Dennis involved his stopwatch and texting finger. I'm sure that many of you know that Dennis would use his cell phone on numerous occasions, and a lot of people thought it was just an extension of his arm. Dennis always had his texting stopwatch finger in position, and even during his illness, he was always at the ready to fire off a text or give an athlete a split time on their race. I have a few different theories other than the texting stopwatch finger theory. The list of other possibilities for the ready position may have included any of the following. 1, he was modestly pointing out that the Windsor Lancers track and cross country teams were first in the country. 2, he was stating his famous quote, "Respect all, but fear none." 3, his number 1 Olympic athlete was Melissa Bishop. 4, he was celebrating with the Kennedys when many of his horses won their race. And 5, or possibly, and more likely, he was just trying to get anyone to pull his finger. Although these theories were all possible, the number 1 theory, I believe, was that Dennis was giving Janet a sign that had a special meaning for her. When Dennis's illness robbed him of his voice, Janet became his voice. And so many people commented on how eloquent a speaker she is. Janet could not speak for Dennis this time, so he handed me the baton, and here are my thoughts on what he was saying. 1, Janet, you are the number 1 most important person in my life. 2, you upheld our wedding vows and excelled in all of them, and especially in for better, for worse, and in sickness and in health. 3, you made my final years and days more comfortable with your loving care and attention to every one of my needs, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. 4, you did everything anyone could possibly ask for, and I sincerely thank you for that. In conclusion, I composed a little poem to Janet from Dennis. Janet, when you miss me and wonder where I can be found, just think I'm attending my final track meet on solid ground. The bell has tolled for my final lap now. Listen to my message, and I will show you how. Take your finger and point it to the sky up above. That is where you can find me, sending all of my love. On those dark and lonely days, I'm really not that far. If you look very closely, I'm still your bright, shining star. Thank you.
Wonderful words, Kelly. Thank you very much. It is somewhat encouraging to know that even at a time like this, at an event like this, that the pulling of the finger is so universally understood. That pleases me. And I don't know what that says about me, but thank you, Kelly, very, very much. I want you to think for just a minute about the athletes who make up a typical track and field team here at the University of Windsor. And add to that the number of athletes that make up a cross-country team. And then multiply that by the years Dennis devoted to coaching and mentoring those athletes. Sprinters, horizontal jumpers, vertical jumpers, middle and long distance runners, throwers, pole vaulters. I think that pretty much covers it. Thousands of athletes. But there had to be a first, and that is Ron Beck, who joins us today via video.
Hello, my name is Ron Beck, and I was one of Dennis's original athletes when he started his coaching journey in Tillsonburg all those years ago. We've had a couple of tough days since we lost our coach, our mentor, and most importantly, our friend Dennis Fairall. But the past few days, we've also been able to reflect on his life. I'm sure all of us have been on social media to read the countless stories, anecdotes, looked at the photos involving Dennis through our competitions, our track meets, our travels, practices, and just hanging out with Dennis. We all have stories that make us smile and laugh. In fact, I bet you we all have hundreds of stories that relate to Dennis. We all have been influenced by Dennis through our participation with the Tillsonburg Legion Track and Field Club and the University of Windsor Lancers. He shaped us as athletes, and whether we knew it or not, he shaped us as individuals. He taught us hard work, perseverance, respect, and honor. There's a lot of Dennis in all of us. I knew Dennis longer than most people because I grew up 3 houses away from him in our neighborhood. He was the one that eventually introduced me to track and field by challenging me to a sprint in the alleyway beside his house. And that's why I probably picked distance runners, because I couldn't sprint. And from there began the humble beginnings of the Tillsonburg Legion Track and Field Club with what we call the original 7 members. There were 7 of us that were still around, and we honored Dennis a couple years ago at the Tillsonburg's favorite son. And as they say, the rest is history. It's no doubt that Dennis's success in Tillsonburg caught the University of Windsor's attention. It was with mixed emotions that we watched Dennis leave us and head to Windsor, but Dennis had instilled in us confidence and a sense of independence that allowed us to forge ahead with our own careers while he was in Windsor. But Dennis was always going to be our coach, and more importantly, always would be our friend. It wasn't easy when Dennis arrived at Windsor. There was a lot of work that would take several years before the university would start reaping the benefits of Dennis's vision. But he was never afraid of work, and that's a characteristic that was evident to all of him that had the privilege of competing and training under his guidance. But the program would eventually catch fire with success, and it would never look back. The titles and accolades would pile up for Dennis, but with the team first philosophy, which Dennis instilled, he was more worried or concerned that the athletes got the recognition, which he really didn't pursue himself. Dennis always had a vision for his athletes, regardless of their abilities, as long as they were willing to work hard. He would help them climb their personal athletic mountains and encourage them every step of the way. Dennis's legacy is all around us. There's no escaping that. And as I said earlier, we all have been influenced by him, and we live parts of our daily lives through that. I also would like to take this time to thank Janet, Jeremy, and Aaron for allowing me and all the rest of us to be part of his extended family, which is something that we'll carry for the rest of our lives. And I want to borrow something from a former Tillsonburg teammate of mine and an athlete that Dennis had coached back in the day. He was saying that with all the accolades and all the honors that Dennis won, and those were amazing accomplishments, but he stated simply that Dennis was just a decent and caring person, someone that we have to hold close in our hearts. And when we remember Dennis, remember him with a smile. Thank you.
And thank you, Ron. We all know that Dennis Fairall coached athletes. What may not occur to you is that Dennis also coached coaches, many of whom competed as Lancers prior to joining his coaching staff. And once they were members of his staff, they continued to learn under Dennis. Coaches who became close friends like Rich Coughlin and Don Garrett. Gentlemen.
Good afternoon, everyone, and Lancer Nation, hello. Donnie and I are honored and humbled to speak on behalf of the many athletes, coaches, and colleagues that Dennis had a huge impact on during his life. We'll do our best to do it right and to keep it together, so please bear with us. From the outside, Dennis is known as the architect of the greatest track and field program in youth sport history. Countless titles, Coach of the Year honors. But on the inside, he's revered as a man who touched and impacted the lives of people he coached directly, people he coached indirectly, his coaching staff, and his peers, coaches that he actually coached against. It's pretty remarkable when you think about it. He's a track coach. Track coaches make workouts. They time things. They encourage, high five, but obviously, Dennis was so much more. To me, he was a humble, hardworking guy who gave his best and got the best out of his people. I first met Denny as a senior in university, where he was the newly appointed track coach at the University of Windsor. My first memories of him were as a very friendly guy with this odd dusting of white in his hair. I actually thought someone played a practical joke on him for our first meeting, put some powder on it. And as the next few years went on, that little dusting got a little longer, a little wider, and a little whiter. Before the big dog days, we knew Dennis as the skunk. From day one, Dennis started preaching the mantra that became his calling card at the University of Windsor. Team first, and every point counts. It was the 8th, 7th, and 6th place finishes that would make the difference. To be honest with you, I don't really think we were quite ready for what he had to offer that first year. We had our high-end talent. We had kids that were year-rounders, but the majority of us, track was social. And we were kind of as interested in where we were going after the track meet than the track meet itself. Funny thing is, Dennis made that better too. And despite a small team and a small coaching staff, Dennis led the team to the highest Ontario finish in the school's history. And to show you how engaged I was at the time, I found that out a week ago. True story. And despite my mediocre efforts as an athlete, Dennis asked me to join the coaching staff 2 years later. I really don't know why. I don't know what he saw in me. I may not have listened as an athlete. I would not disappoint him. Damn it. As a coach.
Okay, you're done for a bit. Okay, thanks, Cogs, and thank you to Janet and the family for entrusting us with this tremendous honor. Back in 1989, I wanted to compete again after a several-year hiatus, so I contacted Dennis here in Windsor and joined the club here. One injury led to another. My season didn't go as I planned, and at that time, Dennis was literally coaching everything on the track. So I took the opportunity and helped him time some sprint workouts and some hurdle workouts. And at the end of that summer, he asked if I'd be interested in joining the staff at the University of Windsor. Changing my life forever for the better. Over the past week, I've had many conversations with former Lancers and read hundreds of Facebook posts. And the common theme was Dennis treated everyone the same, made them feel part of the team regardless of talent level. I talked with Steve Radovich last week, and he spoke exactly what Cogs mentioned. You just didn't want to let Dennis down with your performance. That attitude resonated throughout our team and guarantee is worth 10 to 20 points in any given championship. Athletes wanted to perform at their best for him, not because they were worried about catching crap for a bad performance, but more because he made everyone feel special. Now, don't get me wrong, Denny could be a next level crap giver, but he had the innate ability to distinguish between which athletes he could hammer a bit, just insert Reese Trenhill here, and which athletes required a bit more care. I observed this many times over the years and feel that was one of the many gifts he gave me. Dennis had the amazing ability to get ordinary people to do extraordinary things. One of the many reasons why Dennis Fairall was so admired and respected amongst athletes and peers. Cogsy.
I think I'm ready. To me, the miraculous part of what Dennis created was to get a bunch of self-interested track and field people to buy into a team concept. I mean, track is an individual sport. It's just you in your lane, you on the runway, you in the circle. There's no one to pass you the ball, nobody to block for you. And on top of that, you actually compete against your teammates. But Dennis turned that into team goals, ultra-competitive practices, and always being aware of all the events that were taking place during a meet to support and cheer on. In short, he took a me attitude and he turned it into a we attitude. The marginal athlete, well, they fought like hell to get that point. And many of the superstars were willing to take on extra events where they could score a sixth-place finish and add to the team total. And for many, that single point just snowballed, turned into higher finishes, podium finishes, and for many, all-Canadian status by the time their career had ended. Dennis created an atmosphere where athletes had no limit. The impossible became possible, where the student athletes learned to work hard with each other and for each other. In life, we all want to feel special. Dennis made all team members feel special, regardless of ability. He provided amazing opportunities to all his athletes via training camps, competitive meets at U.S. schools, trips to Europe, and social outings that have left some of the greatest memories in all of our lives. Like that time in Barbados where Donnie...
Yeah.
Sorry.
Don't go there.
Thanks. These opportunities led to lifelong friendships, relationships, marriages, and stories that may or may not have been embellished through the years. Like that time in Barbados.
Yeah. As Cogs alluded to, we definitely had many amazing memories of travels with Dennis. I think I speak for everyone here and watching online that we all saw parts of the world we otherwise wouldn't have if not for Dennis's love of travel. My first trip with Dennis was back in 1980 as a member of the Chatham Legion Track Club, traveling to nationals in Sherbrooke, Quebec. Dennis asked me we were traveling with the Tillsonburg Legion crew. So anyway, Dennis asked me to be at the Tillsonburg Rec Center for noon. So I arrived promptly at 11:30. Well, we left there around 4. Thankfully, the trips got better and more efficient with the University of Windsor team. So many trips and great memories with the Lancers, starting for me, that trip to Barbados. So, Denny and I once took Mike Nolan and Joe White to Santa Barbara, California for a decathlon. Finally, we get to LAX and go to the rental car place. Agent says to Dennis, well, you can have a Lincoln Town Car and for the same price instead of this Ford Taurus. And for some reason, Dennis looked at me and went, well, what do you think, Donnie? I'm like, you're nuts, take the town car. We act like pimps. So off we go. We decided to take a little side trip to Beverly Hills, get one of those dorky maps to the stars homes. So just picture this big-ass Pimp Daddy town car, vault pole strapped to the side, of course, meandering through the narrow streets of Beverly Hills until we came to a stop at the Playboy Mansion. Well, isn't Hugh Hefner out front and yells over, hey, Dennis, come on in, bring your swim trunks. Okay, I made that part up. Denny knew lots of people, but I don't think he knew Hef. But we did stop at the Playboy Mansion. And one of the very last trips I took with Dennis was in 2013 to Francophone Games in Nice, France. We walked into our hotel room and I thought, damn, Denny plays a different game here. So the room was amazing, had a wraparound deck and balcony that overlooked the Mediterranean. And upon reflection now, I can't think of a better setting for one of our last trips together.
In closing for me, Dennis, he made the marginal athlete feel as important as the superstar. He made the good great, the great exceptional, and the exceptional world class. And the most important gift of all, he gave us the opportunity to believe there's no limit to what we can do in life. And to me, that's the gift that this humble hardworking track coach, left us all.
And for me, Rich, I'll reference a Facebook post by former Lancer high jumper Jeff Hewick. The most important lesson Dennis gave me was how to treat people. Everyone out there knows how true this statement is. If we all took Coach's lead here, the world would be a much better place. I also had tremendous appreciation for how Dennis could laugh at himself. And there were many, 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 many instances where this came into play. Coach is always such a joy to be around. And take this time now and in the coming days to think of a particular moment in time when Dennis either treated you in a special way or you witnessed him doing something special for another. Or perhaps when you shared one of those big hearty belly laughs with Dennis, as I did on countless occasions. Share this with family and friends and truly celebrate the amazing person, this amazing person, and the fortunate time you got to spend with him. Cogs and I will share a couple of our favorites for you now. I remember one incident in, I believe it was Winnipeg at National Championships, and we had about 2 or 3 not so good things happen to our team in a short 10-minute span. And Dennis's hair's on fire, he's about to blow a gasket. And right then his phone rang, and back then it was flip phones, and well, I just happened to have one. And he sees it's Jim Parker calling from the Windsor Star. And you know, Dennis is still fuming, but he treated Jimmy with all the respect he deserved and answered his questions. You know, we had some bad things happen, but we had some great performances too. We'll battle to the bitter end, and you know, Jim, you know, always courteous with Jim. Anyway, he finally hangs up, or Jim hangs up the phone, and Dennis is still fuming. Somehow he managed to be courteous with Jim. I wouldn't have answered the phone at all. But he took that phone and he wanted to hang it up, and he lined her up from about here and went bam, trying to hang this phone up. I'm like, I just looked at him, I said, are you kidding me? You just can't hang those cell phones up like a old rotary dial, eh, Denny? He goes, no, you can't. And then, well, we shared a little laugh about it at the time and brought his temperature back down to normal.
I really didn't know which of the many stories I was going to talk about, so I'm going to go with Barbados. Now, I have to give you the Coles Notes version, but it was a lot of fun. And you do realize when we tell these stories that, that all of the orchestration was done by Mr. Fairall. So he was the one that set up the various outings that we had, which included a New Year's Eve celebration beyond all at a bar on the Caribbean, right on the beach. And it was a very little price, all you can drink, for the entire team to go and attend. I did check all the IDs there, athletic director people, they were all of age. Of course, the drinking age in Barbados is 12. And so we had a good evening there. There was a couple of other social outings as well at that same bar that Dennis orchestrated the transportation to. There was also a cruise where there was some booze on the Jolly Roger that somebody had set up. And when we got out onto the open water, we were joined by a group of divers from the University of Wisconsin who were jumping off of the second deck of the Jolly Roger and doing flips and twists, which of course our idiot pounders started trying to emulate. So when people were going to practice the next day and telling Dennis they were probably not able to practice because they had a bruised face, bruised chest, sore back from the diving that they were doing and some of the other festivities, Dennis got mad. So we called the coaches meeting. He says, I'm going to lay into these kids. So you do that, Dennis. We're here to train. This is a training camp. We have titles to win. This is important in our development for this year. Yes, Dennis, it is. So he called the group in and he said, okay, it's about enough. This is a training camp. We are here to train. We're here to get better, and you know, it's okay to have fun. Fun's important. There's a lot of fun at that New Year's Eve party, wasn't it? You know, celebrating New Year's Eve really like all the way across Canada and Winnipeg and Calgary, and that was a lot of fun. But we're here to train, and that Jolly Roger was crazy, wasn't it? You know, the way we could have the diving go on like that, and it was wild. It was an awesome time. But we need to take our training seriously. And as he finished his speech, he turned to me and he says, "Cogs, do you think I was a little too tough on him?" That was Denny.
Oh, man. Just one final story that I can't resist. Former Lancer sprinter I was talking to earlier this week and legendary prankster Mike Gingra reminded me of a particular incident. We were coming back from training camp, landed at Detroit Metro. Dennis always lagged back a bit, made sure everybody got off the plane, knew where they were going. So all the team got there well before Dennis did, down to the baggage carousel. And Mike, one of the first bags out, he notices is Dennis's bag. So Mike, being Mike, opened up Dennis's bag, and right on top there's a pair of Dennis's tighty whities. Well, Mike couldn't just leave it. He pulled the underwear out and put them on top of the bag, and it snaked through the carousel 3 times before Dennis got there at least, and all the Lancers are just laughing their asses off. Dennis finally gets down there and he said, hey, what are you all laughing about? Someone pointed to the bag and he said, oh, that's hilarious. Like, shit, that's my bag. Where's Gingra? He knew exactly who it was. Anyway, that's it for us, and Coach, thanks for everything.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you, Donnie. I suppose unwittingly, Dennis also developed a couple of brilliant racontours. Although the University of Windsor and the city lay claim to Dennis as one of ours, we know clearly that he grew up in Tillsonburg. Darwin Kent was one of his neighbors, and he joins us virtually.
Good afternoon. My name is Darwin Kent. I had the pleasure and benefit of knowing Dennis all of my life. We were neighbors, we played together, and attended school together. Dennis attended Rolfe Street Public School, Maple Lane Public School, and Glendale High School in Tillsonburg. Then off to London to the University of Western Ontario, returning to Tillsonburg for employment and to launch the ever-successful Tillsonburg Legion Track and Field Club. Opportunity arose, and Dennis was off to the University of Windsor as their track and field head coach. Dennis had a highly successful career and attended and coached his athletes at numerous events all over the world. Dennis's accomplishments and awards are a long list that I wouldn't even know where to start. Dennis, his wife Janet, and their 2 children, Jeremy and Aaron, included all the athletes into their home and their lives, which was a major factor in Dennis's success. Dennis's personality and ability to communicate to all members of his track and field teams was indicative of the type of person Dennis was. I was honored to be a part of the committee that recognized Dennis as a favorite son of the town of Tillsonburg. Dennis gave more to life than anybody I know. Your suffering has ended, Dennis. You made the world a better place, and you, my friend, are a role model to many and an inspiration. Rest in peace, Dennis. You will be missed but never forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you, Darwin. Now we have a delightful little twist here. We're going to turn the table 180 degrees and hear from a man who coached Dennis back when he was little Dawg, I suppose. His high school basketball coach, Brian O'Rourke, here on video.
Hello everyone, my name is Brian O'Rourke, And my association with Dennis is that I was his basketball coach in grade 8, as well as 5 years of high school. I'm going to talk about 5 areas of interest. 4 of them are sports, and one is his greatest passion of all. So he has essentially 5 passions that I see in his life. And like most Canadian kids, hockey was his very first. And I remember him in elementary school playing street hockey with Darwin Kent and Ron Beck and a few other kids who lived on his street. The other thing he did with regard to hockey is that he played minor hockey on a traveling team, and he was very good at it. Now the problem that the hockey people had with Dennis is that they only got to see him once a week. Whereas in high school basketball, you get to see your athletes 4 or 5 days a week and perhaps play a game on the 6th or 7th day. Now, this of course meant that Dennis soon became perhaps attracted to basketball for a few years, a little more than any other sport really. But I want you to realize that basketball was actually Dennis's second passion, because he played on a team when he was in grade 8 that was considered a bantam team, but there were other players on his team that were quite good. And one was just an outstanding youth by the name of Bruce Coulthard. Now they won a couple of championships when they were in grade 8, but in grade 9 in high school, Glendale was perhaps put on the map, not only because of this particular team, but all 3 boys' teams and 2 of the girls' teams were outstanding. With regard to basketball, Dennis played on several championship teams, right from grade 9 all the way through grade 13. And the greatest game he played was for the WASA Championship against London Westminster. And in that championship game, it was in our gym. And the good news for us is we didn't lose many games in our gym. And that was too bad for Westminster, because we ended up beating them by about 14 points. But Dennis played a flawless game. He scored 13 points as our point guard and had, I believe, 11 assists in that game. Then came his next passion, and that passion evolved through his high school years. He became involved with a very exceptional high school track coach in our school. And Dennis wasn't just the fastest kid in our school, he was the fastest kid in our conference. And during his last year, I think it was his last year of high school, in the 100-meter WASA championship final, Dennis experienced something very unusual. He tied with 4 other guys for first place. And by the way, his last year of high school, he was named the Athlete of the Year. He went to Western and became under the influence of the great Bob Biggers at Western. And while he was at Western, he was one of the 4 members of the 4x200 relay team that set a Canadian record. I want to refer to Dennis's other passion, and this came as a bit of a surprise to me, and that was harness racing. And people here in Windsor are very familiar with Dennis's interest in that sport. But while he was going through high school, I was not at all knowledgeable about his interest in that particular area. And I found out about it quite by accident, because in the early spring, he was late coming to school one day, and the reason he gave was that he was at the community center. Well, the community center was where the horsemen hung out, because that's where the barn was for the horses. And Dennis would go over there frequently to talk to the different drivers, because these guys were harness racing horses in Flamborough and so on and so forth. We get to the next phase of Dennis's life. And what happened then, of course, he married his high school sweetheart, Janet, and what a wonderful life they've had. With regard to that, they came back to Tillsonburg, and Dennis worked for the community center. In the town of Tillsonburg, for 2 or 3 summers, organized an international track meet. And this became the event of the summertime. He was very instrumental in building an all-weather track at the Annandale High School campus. And we had these great athletes, not just from Canada, but from the United States and a few European countries. Two of them I recall very well. One was Roger Kingdom, who won the gold medal that summer that he raced in Tillsonburg in the 110-meter hurdles. And the other was Danny Harris, who actually stayed at our house. And he got second, I believe, in the 400-meter hurdles. I want to move to his fifth passion, and that's Janet. And we could only imagine what Dennis and Janet have experienced with regard to the vicissitudes of life. But I will say this, that the last number of years have been very difficult for Janet and her family. But she's been a beacon to us all, a beacon of loyalty, of devotion and dignity, of grace. In short, Janet, you are a woman of gravitas. We've lost a bright light. Dennis Fairall has left us, but what a legacy. What a contribution to this great university. What a contribution to track and field. He'll always, always be known to many of us, as we've learned, the big dog. He'll always be known as coach, and most of all, to us in Tillsonburg, he'll always be our favorite son. May the memories of Dennis be a blessing to us all. And as one of his coaches, I'm very happy he came my way in life. And thank you all for listening.
Eric Vandenbroek is the Associate Athletics Director here at the university, and he's in the field house with us today. Eric?
Good afternoon. It's an honor to be here today to speak on behalf of Dennis's work colleagues, the athletic department, and our Lancer family. I want to express my deepest sympathies to Janet, Aaron, Jeremy, and the entire Fairall family. For me, and for so many of us who worked with him in the athletic department, both past and present, Dennis was simply the greatest. He was the greatest in every sense of the word. Dennis was a great work colleague and friend. His office inside the Human Kinetics building was often the center of all the action, as student athletes, coaches, staff, and community supporters would stop in to discuss all things track and field. I often wondered how he was able to get any work done at all in that office with all the many visits and daily drop-ins. For those of us that worked closely with Dennis in that hallway, we knew a couple of things. One, Dennis was always having computer problems. If he hollered for you to come into the office, most oftentimes it was because he needed help sorting out that day's computer glitch. It became such a regular occurrence that we used to joke around the office that he really needed his own personal IT support person. The other thing we came to know was Dennis rarely packed a lunch. His two go-to lunch favorites were the grilled chicken sandwich from Harvey's and Swiss Chalet's rotisserie chicken sandwich, always accompanied with an apple juice. Early in my career, after an office renovation and move, I got to share an office right next to Dennis. As a junior employee, I remember calling home to tell my mom how excited I was that I got to work right next to Dennis. Sharing an office beside him for so many years gave me a firsthand look at how much people loved to be around him. There was a gravitational pull towards him because he made you feel good just by being around him. To be able to make others feel special and valued, what a gift that was. Dennis was a great team builder. His success as a coach and all the championships are well documented, but it was his ability to create a sense of team in what is often thought of as an individual sport that was so remarkable. The camaraderie amongst his athletes and coaches was truly unique and not easily replicated. Even those not associated directly with the team wanted to be part of it. His blue and gold inter-squad meets featured athletic department staff, faculty members, Lancer alumni, and athletes from other Lancer teams, competing together in relays and other events. The opportunity to be a small part of Lancer track and field and be close to Dennis was special for so many. After his many provincial and national championship victories, Dennis was always quick to thank the coaches, athletes, volunteers, officials, and the university for their support. It was always a team effort. In a world where so many are focused on themselves and driven by individual accomplishment, Dennis always made it about the team. What a gift that was. Dennis was a great event organizer. Early in my career, I quickly found out that hosting track and field meets at the University of Windsor was a big deal. Whether it was a provincial or national championship, Dennis and the staff pulled out all the stops to put on first-class track meets. Outstanding volunteer officials, tremendous facility setup with banners, signs, and decorations that created a festival-like atmosphere, and arguably the most entertaining late-night coaches' socials in the country were just some of the things that made track meets in Windsor special. Two events that stand out the most when I think of Dennis are the 2008 Canadian Olympic Trials and the 2006 Pan American Junior Games. I know the Olympic Trials meant so much to Dennis because they helped to shine a spotlight on track and field in Windsor. Seeing the best Canadian athletes trying to fulfill their lifelong dreams of qualifying for the Olympics was thrilling for everyone involved and an incredible event for our university and community. The Pan American Junior Games was arguably the highlight of event hosting at the university. With Dennis serving as head coach of Team Canada, the University of Windsor welcomed athletes from 38 countries to Windsor in one of the most memorable weeks ever. The games marked the opening of our brand new outdoor stadium, another part of Dennis's legacy here. The Pan Ams featured incredible athletic performances, a parade of nations in downtown Windsor, a sold-out opening ceremonies that included the largest and for a brief moment the scariest flame inside our gigantic cauldron, and a closing ceremonies fireworks show that shut down Huron Church Road for over an hour due to poor visibility from the smoke. That event, along with our stadium's development, would never have happened without Dennis's leadership and vision. To be able to bring people together through the sport of track and field and create lifelong friendships, what a gift that was. Dennis was a great travel companion. Anyone that knew Dennis knew he loved to travel. His track teams enjoyed winter training camps in Florida, California, and even Hawaii. In the summer months, he took athletes to outdoor meets throughout Canada, the United States, and Europe. As my friendship grew with Dennis over the years, I was fortunate to be invited on a number of these trips as a driver and liaison. These trips were always memorable because of the tremendous competitive opportunities for our athletes, but also because of the fun we had off of the track. There are too many stories and memories to share, but one that certainly stands out was our trip to California in 2004. For it was inside a seafood restaurant in Anaheim, California, alongside myself, our athletic therapist Dave Stout, and a few Lancer athletes, where Dennis first became known as the Big Dawg, a nickname that stuck with him ever since. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that for all of Dennis's great qualities, a sense of direction when driving was not one of them. Just as he believed in his athletes and coaches, Dennis had an unwavering belief in Susie, the name of his GPS navigation device in the car. Dennis trusted Susie to get him everywhere on road trips, regardless of what a map or looking out the window might suggest. There are countless stories of Dennis and Susie's driving misadventures, including a memorable ride down a dead-end road in Indianapolis and a wild European car ride through Luxembourg, where Dennis and Susie navigated us all the way through. For so many of us, we got to see and experience places around the world that we otherwise wouldn't have, all thanks to Dennis. What a gift that was. And finally, Dennis was a great mentor. From my early days as a staff member being around the team, it was noticeable how special a relationship he had with his athletes. For many, it was clearly more than a traditional athlete-coach relationship. Dennis was a mentor, a friend, and to so many, a father figure away from home. It's a testament to the impact he made in their lives that so many of his athletes have gone on to become coaches themselves. I've heard and read so many stories from our alumni about how they were inspired to go into teaching and coaching because of their experiences with Dennis. I see this even today in my own life. My daughter Sophie is coached soccer by John Foglia, a good friend of Dennis's and a former Lancer coach. When I watch John interact and coach the girls with so much joy, positivity, and with such emphasis on the team, it reminds me of Dennis. To be able to positively impact so many people and influence how they lead their lives, what a gift that was. Dennis was truly the greatest. For all of his success as a coach, he was a better person and a better friend. He was a gift to all of us, and we are so lucky we had him in our life. Heaven is a busy place today. Dennis is back together with Jerry Slavic, and I know the two of them are busy planning their next track meet. And Dennis and Gary Malloy are reunited. I have no doubt that G-Money is having a beer, the Big Dog's having an apple juice, and the two of them are busy analyzing and discussing Bish's training schedule right now in preparation for her run at next summer's Olympics. The Big Dog, Dr. Dawg, the Dog Father, the Lancer family loves you. This will always be the Big Dog's house, and you will always be the real king of the West Side. In a sky full of stars, yours shines the brightest. Rest easy, my friend.
Thank you, Eric. In the early 2000s, Kelsey Main was a member of the Lancers track team, a sprint hurdler, now a talented artist who writes and records music and dabbles in acting as well. Watch the screen. Here's Kelsey.
Hi, my name is Kelsey Main, and I am extremely honored to be asked to be a part of Dennis's celebration. I think it's safe to say that he made a lasting impression on all of us. And as a musician, obviously, we write about things that impact our lives and move us. And so I couldn't resist but write a song about my experience running track and field and how invincible I felt when I was part of that team. So the song is called Nothing on Us. 1, 2, 3, 4. More than just a dirt road, one string of city lights, no stopping no one to underestimate us. Hell yeah, we know how to get the job done, so let them roll on in with their bigger bus, 'cause we know no matter
There are many ways that we can measure a coach's success. By far the most objective of those methods is in races and events won, in championships won, and in medals won, in the success of the individuals coached. Like Melissa Bishop-Niryagu, Canadian champion and national record holder in the 800 meters, Pan American Games gold medalist, World Championship silver medalist, a member of Canada's Olympic team, and a woman who met the man she would marry right here in this facility. Melissa and OC were both very accomplished Lancer athletes. Here is Melissa Bishop-Niryagu.
Our community has lost a husband, a father, a papa, a friend, a coach, and a mentor. To me, Dennis was the majority of these people. When I was first recruited by Dennis, he asked me if he could call me Bish, and the name has stuck ever since. A recruiting trip later, he had me convinced that Windsor was the place to be, to study and train among the best. Dennis made sure that you were part of the team and built his legacy believing that one team together could accomplish one goal. His heart was so big that even those who didn't quite make the team standard were still allowed to be a part of our team. After university is when Dennis and I really started our journey together. We both believed in the same dream, and he was willing to commit to it beside me. I think I saw Dennis nearly every day for 5+ years while training for the Olympics. With that, I quickly became a part of the Fairall crowd. With yearly racing circuits overseas, Janet and I quickly became close, traveling to Europe every summer to chase races. Thank you, Janet, for being that support for Dennis and I, for selflessly giving up your family time so that Dennis could watch me run circles around a track. But more importantly, for welcoming me with open arms into your family. The Fairalls are my family away from home. In getting to know Dennis, the more we traveled, the more I learned that this man knew luxury, and unfortunately for OC, he introduced it to me at a very early on in our travels. Dennis flew business class only, and when we started traveling around the world every summer, we made up some of the craziest stories so that he could get me bumped up to business with him. I was his granddaughter once, his niece another time, and it all worked. This man had a way of negotiating. We flew overseas one summer, and this time the niece ploy didn't quite plan out, but he got myself and Raylene bumped up closer to him anyways. And he came back to check on us, and he said, "Come up to my seat. I think Justin Timberlake is sitting up front with me." So I can just see him. He has this silly grin on his face. He's so excited. So I went up, and Dennis is in true first class. He got pajamas, they gave him slippers, they even made the bed for him on this plane. And I casually look around, pretend to be talking to Dennis, and sure enough, there is a celebrity sitting next to him, but it's not Justin Timberlake. It was Ashton Kutcher. And when I told him, he just giggled that laugh that we all know so well. We are so lucky to have known Dennis. Even if you only met him a few times, consider yourself incredibly lucky. If you had the privilege of being coached by him or alongside him, consider yourself even luckier. And if you had the chance to know Dennis as well as I did, to fall under his tutelage, be mentored by one of the best coaches in track and field, then you are blessed to have known him like I did. It's obvious with the support we've seen that he's made an immense impact on everyone's life. Dennis had a way of making us feel like family. With this family team approach, look how many of us are married to a former teammate and now have children together. We're all somehow a product of Dennis's vision. He has taught me to be kind, to be accepting, and to respect one another. He always said to me, "Respect all and fear none." My dream of being an Olympian was only a dream until I met Dennis. Now that dream has changed. It's no longer to be an Olympian, it's to be an Olympic gold medalist. He has made me realize that what this goal can really be. His trust in me, and in turn my trust in him, made Dennis and I the perfect team. He quickly became more than a coach. He was a mentor to me. Even after being awarded the most winningest coach in the youth sport and putting me on my first Olympic team, he still needed more information. He wanted to learn more, and I admired that so much in Dennis. He knew me so well that prior to medaling at the World Championships in Beijing, we had a workout that I completely bombed, and he knew telling me the truth about the actual times would send me into a downward spiral of self-doubt days before competing. But Dennis, being Dennis, he lied to me. He knew me well. He told me what I needed to hear to keep my head on straight, and it wasn't until we were celebrating with a medal in hand that he came out with the truth. That's a good coach. I hope, Dennis, you know the impact that you have made on my life. Not only have you shaped me into the athlete I am today, but you've also helped shape me into the woman and the mother I am today. Because of you and your endless support, my daughter knows that my job is running. You did that, Dennis. You've built an empire and left a legacy so great that you will forever be remembered. Our ultimate goal is an Olympic medal. Dennis would never put it on paper or speak it out loud. He's one of the most superstitious people I know. But I know he believes I can. This year, a gold medal will be brought home for Dennis. I miss you, Dennis, every day. May you know that you are in our hearts forever and the immense impact you've made on all of our lives. Thank you for being you. Rest in peace, Dr. Big Dog. We love you.
I'd like to call on Kelly Sevier once more to speak on behalf of Dennis's wife, Janet, and on behalf of the Fairall family. Oh, Janet is going to speak? I'm sorry.
Just want to extend a thank you to everyone who has shared the memories and the kind words that they've posted for Dennis, sent in emails, or text to me. This field house is where Dennis felt most at home. When I used to wheel him to practices, I could feel his whole demeanor change for the better, and a look of contentment would come over him. My deepest gratitude for allowing him this one final stop at his house. Dennis has been recognized by so very many regarding his contributions to the track and field world, to the impact he has had on the lives of athletes, to his horse friends, and by his family. Thank you for making his life so full. Dennis and I spent the last 51 years together. The hole that he leaves is immeasurable, and it is unimaginable to see a future without him. Early in our marriage, I learned 3 things very quickly. I had better learn to love track and field, I better learn to love horses, and I better be ready to travel. And through extensive experience, I finally did. However, Dennis met me halfway. He learned to love my passions as well, or at least to take an interest. We learned and grew together. We built a home, a family, and filled it with so many friends. If you close your eyes right now, you can imagine an impish man encircled with a crown of gray hair. Blue eyes are sparkling. Each of those gray hairs is a testament to the number of lives he's touched. And each of us, wife, child, grandchild, athlete, or friend, should take pride in knowing that we added to that crown. A dear friend and athlete shared, Dennis's life will not be only measured by the accolades and titles he won, but in the number of lives he influenced over the years. Dennis has been my coach, mentor, father figure, and dear friend for as long as I can remember. So much of what I have in my life, both personally and professionally, I owe to Dennis. This is true for so many of you, but also for me and our family. Dennis brought me the world. Now he's answering his final boarding call, and I only hope that his journey is first class. Bye, dear.
Thank you, Janet, very, very much. We're going to wrap up this celebration, this remembrance of Dennis, with a video. But before we do that, I have some final thoughts and some words that I'd like to leave with you. From the time Janet and her family invited me to be a part of this celebration, this remembrance, I've been thinking, which is not my strong suit, about what to say about my friend Dennis Fairall that is appropriate. I am not a religious man. It doesn't mean I'm not a spiritual man. I'm just not certain what it is that allowed me the opportunity to meet and know Dennis. I can count many times in my life when I've arrived at a fork in the road. I choose to go left, my life takes a much different direction. I go right, it takes another direction. For some reason, be it fate or dumb luck, or perhaps a combination of the two, I arrived here in Windsor from St. John, New Brunswick in 1989. And it wasn't long after that that I met this Fairall fellow with the odd white patch in his hair. I spent 25 years as a sportscaster working in both radio and television. I've had the fortune to meet some very famous and very successful, some very accomplished people, athletes, coaches, administrators. I can honestly say that I've never met anybody quite like Dennis Fairall. A burning competitive spirit completely masked by good humor and immeasurable decency. I want you all to think just for a moment about his legacy. Think of the athletes he coached who became coaches themselves. Using the example he set to guide an entirely new generation of young athletes, teaching them the finer points of their particular event, but also a lot about what it is that makes life really good. It's like a giant web that's been cast over our region, in our schools, in our institutions, and our youth track clubs. Coincidentally, just this morning, at about 8:30, my wife and I were walking through Malden Park, and there was former Lancer track athlete Kurt Downs coaching kids from the Border City Track Club. I don't know that Dennis was entirely conscious of the incredible good he did for this community. I think he was far too modest, I think, to wrap his head entirely around something like that. I will say this, I'm just incredibly grateful for having known him. I'm grateful for the example he set for me as well. And in one of the most gracious and unrecognized decisions ever, I salute Janet's willingness to share him with us. You've probably heard it from your parents, but I will tell you, your grandfather was a great guy. I want to leave you with what I hope you'll find is a happy thought. The words of that great thinker and teacher, Theodore Geisel, Dr. Seuss, who said, "Don't cry because it's over. Smile because it happened." Thank you all.
sky, 'cause you're a sky full of stars. 'Cause you light up the park. I don't care, go on and tear me apart. I don't care if you do. Cause in the sky full of stars, I think I saw you.
The hay is in the barn and sea biscuits on the track.
Full of stars. I wanna die.
Of course I'm using the hay in the barns comment because I own bloody horses.
'Cause you get lighter the more it gets dark. I'm gonna give you my heart. Oh, I don't care, go on and tear me apart. I don't care if you do. Cause in the sky full of stars, I think I see you. I think I see
Big Dawg!